Hey, welcome to Feeling Twisty. Last night, Kim pointed out that my old Feeling Twisty WordPress blog was still active. I couldn't believe it. I'd forgotten all about it. I started that blog 5 or 6 years ago when I was still sick. And that's the name I gave myself, Feeling Twisty. And I've held on to it, and now I'm using it for this podcast. But it had an entirely different meaning back then, because that's how I felt all the time, in a painful way, all twisted up from the brain damage and the generalized dystonia. And so we kind of looked at the blog for a couple of minutes last night, and I was just amazed at how different things were back then than they are now. And it reminded me of what I talked about in an earlier podcast, yesterday's or the day before, I can't remember, when I said if you want an example of how you've moved states, think back to an earlier part of your life and how you behaved, or the choices you made, the things you did, and think about how you are now. Does it seem so foreign to you? Like, how could I ever have done that? I can't believe I acted like that, or I can't believe I said those things. Well, you've changed states. You've moved states. And looking at the blog, my posts, oh my gosh, I'm not judging it or regretting it, because that was the state I was in, and that was evident by the posts. A lot of self-pity, a lot of victimhood, just a lot of that, just a lot of ugh. Check it out and see if you can tell what I'm talking about. Just you may not know me personally, but just from listening to these podcasts, check out the WordPress blog. It's feelingtwisty.wordpress.com, and just notice the difference on how I thought and the things I said back then to how it feels now to listen to me. And that's it. For me, that's a clear example of moving to a new state, a new dwelling place. If you think about, the Bible talks about this in the New Testament. It says, in my Father's house are many mansions or rooms, and I go to prepare a place for you. And I will, after I prepare it, I will come back and bring you to the place I prepared. And if you know that Jesus, that's the one quoted there in the New Testament saying that, if you know that Jesus is a personification of the Creator of our imagination, then you see that we go in imagination and prepare a place, a new state, a desire, and we go and prepare it by imagining that desire fulfilled. And then it says, I will come back for you and bring you to it, or bring you to that new place. That's what Neville Goddard calls a bridge of incidents. Things will happen in your life that will bring you to the fulfillment in the physical world. It's already fulfilled, already prepared, already occupied in your imagination. You've gone to that new place, that new room, and occupied it. And then you'll be brought across a bridge of incidents. You'll be navigated to that fulfillment in the physical world, in this 3D world. Somebody posted in the Facebook group last night or today, just about this very thing, about states and rooms. And she had a good example. If you think of the state as a room, like that scripture says, and you occupy this new state, this new room, thinking of it as a room, looking through the windows of that room, of this new state, how would you see the world? Does the world look different through those windows than they did out of your current state, through the windows of this current state that you're in? And how would your friends and the rest of the world see you, viewing you occupying that new room, that new state. I love the example. She always comes up with, that's Liz Luna again. I quoted her yesterday. She always has a cool way of explaining it. So when we occupy whatever state we desire, we occupy it as we move into that state in our imagination, knowing that it's already true. And you don't have to create a scene, an imaginal scene. I like doing it. I enjoy doing it. For me, putting myself in a scene, first person experience, present tense, this feeling that it's happening right now, it brings about the tones of reality for me and brings about that feeling of this is done, I've experienced it. But you don't have to do that. The absolute key to this, in my experience, is just the knowing that it's done. This feeling of it's already true. So you can take whatever it is you want. Financial freedom, relationships, anything. Seemingly big and seemingly small. Just get it clear in your mind what it is you want. Come up, as many details as you want, because it's your thing that you want to fulfill. A new car, a new house. Think about all of the things you want in the new house. A fireplace in the bedroom, Ethernet hardwired throughout the house, Wi-Fi throughout the house, whatever. All these little details. It's cool. It's fun. But decide what you want. Be clear on it. And you don't have to, like I've said before, you're not transmitting this to something outside of you. You're not communicating to the universe beyond your own mind, beyond your own imagination. So if you know what it is you want, then God knows already. So you don't have to get ready and write all this down and transmit it via meditative internet. You know what I mean? There's nowhere to go with it except to turn within. And since you know what you want, you know what you want. God knows already. So the next step would just be to ask yourself, what would I feel like? What would the feeling be like if this were true? If I had this right now? What would it feel like if this were already true? Let that feeling, when you ask yourself that feeling comes up automatically. You're answering yourself. What would it feel like if this were true right now? And let that feeling, that satisfactory feeling, that feeling of doneness, it's done. This feels good. And I did this. You just dwell in that feeling. Just stay right there, let go, and just bask in it. And that feeling that comes up when you ask yourself, how would I feel? Or how would this feel if this were already true? And you just linger there in that feeling. Let that feeling clothe you. I've mentioned this before, I like thinking of it as I'm sinking down into some cool water. You might want warm water. I like cool water. I don't like hot baths. But it's a soothing feeling. This feeling becomes one with you. You become one with this feeling. You've moved states. Once there will be a point, it might be very quickly, it might be, a couple of seconds, it might be a minute, where you're just basking in this feeling. And then there will be a point where the desire to continue is gone. You're done. The creative process is over. That seed is planted. Open your eyes, or get up from your chair, or get back to whatever you're doing, knowing that it's done. And then if there's any doubt, if you feel like you've gotten bumped, if there's doubt that creeps in, just bring that feeling back up. That same feeling that you felt when you asked yourself, how would it feel if this were true already? Just let that feeling come back up, fill you up again, and get on with your day. And you'll notice how your reactions change, your thoughts change, your body of beliefs change as you see the world differently from this new state, the state of your wish fulfilled. It's beautiful. It's so simple and yet so frighteningly hard sometimes. At least that's the way I've imagined it over the last couple of years, but it really is simple. I've imagined it to be so difficult sometimes, but it's not. Just get clear on what you want. God is in you. You are God. Your desires are God's desires. So whatever it is you want, you don't need to ask permission from anybody. You don't need to ask, what are my parents going to think if I do this, if I move to the mountains? What are my coworkers going to say when they hear I'm doing this project or whatever? You need to ask permission of no one. Because each one of us, although we have different names, we all are God having the experience of a lifetime. I love that line. I love that phrasing. That's from Mr. 2020. I didn't think of that. God having the experience of a lifetime in a lifetime of adventure. So no need to ask permission. Like Proverbs says, a desire unfulfilled makes one sick. But a wish fulfilled is like the tree of life, is the tree of life. So what is it you want? Get clear on that, and then ask yourself, what would the feeling be like if this were already true? Yeah. Just bask in that feeling. Let it become one with you. You're marrying that feeling, that new state. You're becoming one with it. And then go about your day. I love you guys. It's Feeling Twisty.